በዛሬው ዕለት በአሜሪካን ኤምባሲ በኢትዮጵያ የአሜሪካን ኤምባሲ አምባሳደር ሚስተር ማሲንጋ በተለያዩ ጉዳዮች ላይ ለተመረጡ ሚዲያዎች ምላሽ እየሰጡ ቆይታ አድርገዋል። ከተሳታፊ ጠያቂዎች መካከል የተነሱ የነበሩ ጥያቄዎች አሉ።
Thank you for the opportunity. My first question is related to your policy brief, last week's policy brief. In your policy brief, you just mentioned all warring parties by name, which is, I think, very unprecedented. In your brief, you mentioned FANO's rejection of dialogue, and I'm glad if you could tell us with whom the U.S. government or the embassy have discussed among the FANO leadership. I'm asking this question in light of the very disintegrated and different type of FANO leadership. So I'm glad if you could tell us with whom you discussed and related to the fight in Amara region. Some people say the U.S. government, not only the U.S. government, the Western countries give less attention to the fight in Amara region in comparison with the attention you gave to the Tigray war. So, apart from expressing your readiness to help for the dialogue process, please tell us if any practical effort you have made. That's it.
Thank you for your question. I'm glad you came back. I remember last week you were very intent and insistent on asking questions, and I told you that you'd have an opportunity to follow up, and so I'm glad that you and your colleagues came today. In terms of last week and my remarks then, they were clear. I was clear in expressing our point of view. We have heard the point of view from the government of Ethiopia as well as others. So I leave it to others to continue commenting if they would like to. That's their prerogative. And the government is now moving ahead, as it has indicated, through leadership of all Ethiopians to figure out how to move ahead in this very complicated context. Let me come to the heart of the question that you're posing today about the United States government and us here today, and how we care about the various linguistic groups here in Ethiopia. Let me be very, very clear and very, very direct, which is that the United States government and its representatives here, its representatives in Washington, care deeply about all Ethiopians. I cannot be more clear, more plain, more simple in indicating this. During conflict, the northern conflict, of course, we cared about the terrible situation that we saw in Tigray. But it wasn't just Tigray, and we insisted on humanitarian access for all parts of Ethiopia affected by that conflict at that time, just like we are insisting upon and asking for humanitarian access to areas of Ethiopia that are experiencing conflict today, including Amara. So I cannot be more clear. We direct our resources to those in need wherever they are. My colleague, Mr. Stein, can attest to that and speak to that to a greater degree. And we will not rest until we work collaboratively with all Ethiopians, with the leadership of the government, to figure a way to support forward progress so that our humanitarian assistance at one point is not necessary, that the natural productivity of the Ethiopian people with its resources will be more than enough to feed and care for all people. We very much look forward to that future and are optimistic that Ethiopia will arrive there. Tim, anything to add to that?
Sure. I would just add that we provide assistance not only to those in need, but where we have access. And right now, largely in the country, despite all the conflict and challenges that we see, we do have access to many communities. Now, it's challenging to provide assistance there. Our brothers and sisters on the front line providing the assistance are at a risk of serious injury on a daily basis. It is more expensive to provide assistance, and there's a lot of challenging negotiations, but we're able to do so. And that's why it might be a little bit quiet of how we're getting our assistance out. And that's a good thing when it's not something that we're shouting from the rooftops every day. But we are always focusing on those who are most in need and where we can provide access. Those are the two criteria for our assistance.
Thank you. Addis Fortune.
You didn't answer, Mr. Ambassador. Sorry.
We're gonna
FANO rejected dialogue, and I was asking you with whom you discussed about dialogue.
Diplomacy has many elements. There's a public element and there's a private element. Ma'am.
Addis Fortune, please.
What prompted the U.S. government to make that policy speech at this time? What were the push factors behind it?
I think I was pretty clear in my comments in terms of what we care about, who we care about, and the positive future for Ethiopia that we'd like to see.
The timing.
Next time, Ambassador, recently you made a speech here in Addis where you called upon the government in Amhara.
ከቲቪ9 የተነሱ ጥያቄ ቁጥር 1 በባለፈው በተደረገው ንግግር ላይ በአማራ ክልል ባለው ጦርነት መንግስትና የአማራ ቡድን ድርድር ጠረጴዛ ላይ እንዲመጡ ጥሪ ያቀረቡ ሲሆን የተለያዩ ምላሾችን ያስገኘ ሲሆን ራሳቸውን ፋኖ ብለው የሚጠሩት ቡድኖች ያቀረቡት ሐሳብ እስከምን ድረስ አምነዋል? መንግስትስ ቢቀበለው ምን ፋይዳ አለው ነበር የመጀመሪያው ጥያቄያችን።
No, thanks for the question. Let me turn to the question of access again, and I'll turn it to my colleague, Mr. Stein, because
ይህንን ጥያቄ መልስ ከመስጠቴ በፊት ለሁማኒቲ አሲስታንስ ለዩኤስአይዲ ዲስፒዩት ሚሽን ዲሬክተር ሚስተር ቲሞቲ ሴትን ምላሽ እንዲሰጡ ድሉን አሳልፍ ምላሽ ሰጥተውናል።
The conflict in the country right now is affecting, as I was saying, not just the populations directly, but also indirectly.
አንድ ሀገር ላይ ጦርነት ሲከፈት ህዝቡ ይጎዳል። በቀጥታም ሆነ በተዘዋዋሪ ህዝቡ ይጎዳል። ይህ ማለት ገበሬው ያመረተውን ለህዝቡ ካልሸጠ፣ ህዝቡ በትክክል ካልደረሰው፣ እንዲሁም መንገዶች ክፍት ካልሆኑ፣ መመገብ ካልተቻለ ያስባል። በዚህ ዓመት ብቻ ለምግብ በተደረገ እርዳታ $243 ሚሊዮን ለህዝቡ እንዲደርስ አድርገናል። ይህን ሁሉ ህዝቡ ጋር በትክክል እንዲደርስ ሰላም መሆኑ ግዴታ ነው። ስምምነት መፍጠር አለብን። ይህ ቀላል አይደለም። ቢሆንም ስምምነት ብዙ ውሳኔዎች እንድናደርግ ቢያስገድደንም መደረግ አለበት። ከሳቸው በመቀበል አምባሳደር ማሲንጋ በጦርነቱ ምክንያት ብዙ ህጻናት ከትምህርት ገበታቸው ተፈናቅለዋል። በአግባቡ ምግብ መመገብ እንኳን ሳይችሉ ብዙ ህጻናቶችን በህይወት አጥተናል። እኛ በአትኩሮት ህጻናት መመገብ ማስተማር ላይ እንሰራለን። ይህንን ለማድረግ ደግሞ ስምምነት ማድረግ አለባቸው ሲሉ ምላሽ ሰጥተውናል።
The lack of access becomes the driver of humanitarian assistance, and it becomes a determining factor if they can receive it.
And if I could just compliment what my colleague is offering today in this respect, let me go back and reiterate our call for all to respect schools, hospitals, health facilities, water points, so that areas that are essential for basic human needs are available to all. Access to those kinds of services are essential. We've seen recent statistics that talk about children under 5 who have not yet been vaccinated. Those numbers are particularly accented in areas where there is the greatest level of conflict. There have been recent statistics that talk about the number of children who are no longer in school in Ethiopia. Again, probably those numbers are particularly concentrated in areas that have seen the greatest amount of conflict. Again, as part of the international community, I'm very proud to stand with the rest of the international community in calling for access to those in need. And oftentimes, access requires coordination by those in very complicated environments. Engaging with the government in assuring access to those people is an essential element to how to address and enhance the well-being of those innocent people who are not party to any conflict.
Thank you very much. My question is related with the support that you provide for Ethiopia in terms of rehabilitation and reconstruction. has mentioned that it's need around 20 billion for the construction and rehabilitation process in the northern part, which is the Brazil border. So what's your support to maybe like in light of the capacity that you have, like so far what you have been providing, and is there any lump sum amount of money in the pipeline maybe that will come?
So let me start off and then turn.
Let me add on that.
Oh.
The humanitarian assistance as well, which is one short of the expectation when you look at the international humanitarian assistance in as well. So what's your plan to maybe phrase it in the coming years?
On both questions, let me offer a few thoughts and then turn to Mr. Stein to offer some more details. The United States, the international community, is in no way in a position to support all of the needs for reconstruction from the northern war all at once. I think it's safe to say that that is true for the Ethiopian government and Ethiopia's economy. Addressing all of those needs immediately is not realistic. How that can be done in a step-by-step fashion is something that we're working on right now. DDR is one key element. And so finding ways to step forward today and then step forward again tomorrow while maintaining forward momentum, that's what we need to address. I'm very proud today to indicate the United States is doing its part in the DDR element. There are many other elements associated with the reconstruction that you talked about. But you have to start today. You have to start somewhere. Looking at the entirety of the picture can be overwhelming and daunting. But looking at what can be done on a step-by-step fashion enables forward momentum. In terms of the humanitarian assistance question, Mr. Stein was in Geneva at the pledging conference, and he can speak to that a little bit more. But as a representative of the United States government here in Ethiopia, and a representative of a country that is by far the largest donor in the humanitarian space, I'm very proud of the generosity of the American people. But Ethiopia is an enormous country, and finding ways to address the most critical needs is something that we're most focused on achieving in coordination with the government as well as with the rest of the international community. But it's a complicated, very difficult process given the size of the need. Finding a way to get past that so that humanitarian assistance is something that the government itself would be able to manage, that the Ethiopian economy would be able to manage in a more secure setting. That's the objective that we aim to see. Mr. Stein?
Thank you, Ambassador. When I look at our assistance, I think of two constituencies that we're trying to really to really take care of and please. One is the Ethiopian people, and the second is the American taxpayer, who is very generous with their resources in order to provide resources in Ethiopia and elsewhere around the world. And when we look at the enormous needs that are growing within Ethiopia, if we had our preferences here at this table, we would galvanize as many resources as we can to support whoever needs it at any given time. That's what we care about. However, we also have to be able to show that those resources are going to be well spent, going to be well secured, and reaching those in need and achieving results. And our process is to be able to show progress, show results, show partnership with the other international community, and with the Ethiopian government to be contributing resources as well. And when there's a true partnership with results that are showing momentum and progress on the ground, then the American taxpayer is more willing to be able to invest in Ethiopia. So we need to show progress. Beyond the humanitarian assistance that we've been speaking about, throughout this whole period of crises, we have stayed in Ethiopia investing in health systems, investing in education systems, in working with your government and creating good policies that are going to affect all Ethiopians and help with the reconstruction. I'm very grateful to hear about the Rural Land Administration law that passed last week, thanks in part to the assistance of the U.S. government in providing some expertise in that bill. Those are the types of efforts that are, in the long run, going to help rehabilitate this country. We have been doing it. We will continue to do it. But more resources will be contingent upon us being able to see progress collectively on the ground.
Thank you.
you. My question is about the two initiatives, that is a national dialogue and transitional justice. So you've been expressing strong support to these two initiatives, but for most Ethiopian stakeholders, I can say, these two initiatives in their current forms are simply performative to the international community, and they are means of securing some funds. That is a perception. So, given these perceptions, what are your revised expectations from these initiatives?
Well,
And, is there any role your government can play beyond its current support to facilitate more inclusive and genuine variants of the two initiatives?
yeah, thank you so much for the question. I respect those who have pessimistic perceptions. I'm an optimistic person. I also know that the issues that need to be addressed are complicated. This is not something where the government will be able to very quickly solve and address all of the skepticism, all of the pessimism about this. Of course there are problems. Of course there are difficulties. You know them far better than I do in terms of how to move ahead with transitional justice, certainly to move ahead with an inclusive dialogue. But I would say, what are the alternatives? Ethiopia is full of incredibly creative people who know how to address their issues far better than I do. When all Ethiopians come together to figure out how to make these initiatives work, the government has created a platform in both contexts that is a viable, effective one. It's now important for everyone to look at how this might be made active and figure out how to make this vehicle move ahead. You asked about how the United States can engage. We engage with both institutions regularly through a variety of mechanisms, and we will continue to do so and look for other ways to engage. But at the end of the day, this is a process and a challenge that is for Ethiopians to address. The government, as the leader of all Ethiopians, has the responsibility and is taking its responsibility seriously to figure out how to make this work. I don't have the answers on how exactly national dialogue will work given the current set of circumstances. The questions that are posed relative to that challenge are obvious ones and good ones. But there are answers. There are responses. There are paths forward. I would simply say, what are the alternatives? My staff knows that I am perfectly happy to entertain difficult questions about difficult issues. But it's really about how one or an organization finds answers, finds creative solutions. That's what defines success. And I'm very confident that Ethiopia will find success.
My question is for Mr. Timothy. USA and Ethiopia puts a joint statement, you remember, I think, about investigating an aid diversion. But you didn't reveal the result yet. Why? And if you could tell us some of the findings and what new mechanisms you have put in place to prevent those aid diversions.
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. We've of course been occupied with this issue for the past year, going back to making sure that we're good stewards of the American taxpayer resources. The reason why you have not seen an update on the joint investigation is investigations are done separately from us here at the embassy, and they are an independent process. And I hope when the government is able to finalize their investigation, they will be able to share their results directly with the Ethiopian people. We're very proud of the reforms that we put in place with the Ethiopian government and the donor community to assure that humanitarian resources are going to those most in need. Most importantly, resources are now done, the selection of beneficiaries is done through a more scientific, independent process, going through various tools that we have, a household economic analysis, for example, to determine what individuals within communities need the resources most. The decision of who within those communities receives the aid is based on need alone and no other factors whatsoever. And there's better oversight mechanisms to ensure that the storage and distribution of the food is done in a independent way by humanitarians. This is a new practice that was put in place jointly with the Ethiopian government. And so far, we have been able to mobilize resources in the international community to the most in need. USAID alone has reached 4.5 million people with our assistance since we resumed back in the later part of last year. And we have much greater assurances that the aid is going to those in need. And we're always continuing to dialogue with our UN partners and the government on ensuring that that process is constantly adjusted to make sure that we're doing this correctly.
So you are doing the investigation alone. So we are expecting different results.
You can ask
from you and from the government.
You can ask your government that question, and they'll be able to respond to you how their investigation is going.
Ambassador, from your statements last week and some of the answers here today, I believe you're well connected and well informed about the national issues here. So, and also you said you're an optimistic person, but realistically speaking, if you were to speak in posterity and be remembered for the answer 5 years down the line, where do you see Ethiopia in the next few years?
Thank you for your question. I think there are many who don't necessarily see me as well informed, but that's for others. That's for
including
others.
the foreign minister of Ethiopia.
The foreign minister and I are good friends. Relative to the posterity that I look forward to when that sad day comes, and it's my time to leave as ambassador here. I look forward to seeing a country that is stronger, more resilient, at peace, moving ahead with reforming its institutions as Ethiopians have come together and determined a way to do so. It won't be easy. It will not be easy. If it were easy, it would have been done a long time ago. But I am very confident, and in the coming years, that this will be a stronger country where investors are looking forward to engaging. That will be a stronger exporter, where institutions are stronger, where education is stronger, where healthcare is stronger, and people are more optimistic and looking ahead.
Planned voice policy change.
ከቲቪ9 የተነሳው ሁለተኛው ጥያቄ የአሜሪካን ፖሊሲ በኢትዮጵያ መንግስትና በኢትዮጵያ ላይ እየተደረገ ያለውን ለውጥ አለ ወይ ሲሉ ነበር የጠየቅናቸው።
No, I work very closely with my friend, the foreign minister, his team, the rest of the government every day on a huge number of issues.
እሳቸውን በምላሻቸው በትኩረት ሌት ተቀን ከኢትዮጵያ ጋር በጥብቅ እየሰራን ነው። እንዲሁም በሁሉም ጉዳዮች ላይ ከሌሎች ሀገራቶች ጋር እንዳለን ቁርኝነት ከኢትዮጵያ ጋር ደግሞ በተለየ መልኩ አብረን እየሰራን እንገኛለን። እንዲሁም ለወደፊት እያደረግን ያለናቸው ነገሮች ክር እንደሚሆኑም ገልጸዋል። ቀላል አይደለም፣ ቢሆንም ግን አብረን ለመስራት ኢትዮጵያን ለማሳደግ የተቻለንን ሁሉ እንጥራለን ሲሉ ምላሻቸውን ሰጥተዋል።
Issues that you see and issues that you don't, and do so effectively. Is it easy every day? No, it's not. But we move forward. And we're moving forward every day.
So, is there any update regarding the process or maybe the consular consultation that you had with the Ethiopian government in terms of reinstating Ethiopian status to that of the airport?
Talking about AGOA, or let me start with AGOA. This question that comes up frequently. AGOA is a trade benefit that is defined by U.S. law. There's a good news story that's happening right now. Okay, absent AGOA qualification for Ethiopia, exports of coffee are, I think, to the United States at an all-time high. Exports of apparel despite AGOA not being in place, remain very, very strong. Exports of leather goods also are very, very strong and increasing. Ethiopia has a great foundation for expanding its manufacturing exporting base to the United States and to the world. Ethiopia, despite the challenges in the economy today, all those challenges that you know better than I do as Ethiopians, continues to be an export powerhouse. I look forward to the time in which we're able to reinstate AGOA, which will simply supercharge what is happening today. Look forward to that very, very much. Coming back to your question, of course, it would be my honor and great privilege to help to restore AGOA benefits for Ethiopia during my tenure. Right now, that's not possible for reasons that we've discussed many times, but we look forward to it. This is a complicated year relative to AGOA. AGOA will expire, the section of U.S. law will expire at the end of the year, January 1. AGOA, as it currently is known, will not exist. So I know that on Capitol Hill in Washington, working with the administration, they're trying to determine what is the future of AGOA. What will it look like? How will investment be treated? How will the fact that there are countries of different income levels on the continent, how will that be addressed? All these are very complicated questions that are being addressed today, which is an election year, as you know, in the United States. It would be advantageous to bring Ethiopia back into the fold at the appropriate time as quickly as possible. Again, we're not ready to do that at this juncture. According to U.S. law, the circumstances are not right, but we look forward to those opportunities.
Thank you. I'd like to ask about your perspective about the Ethiopian security situation and global politics, because you have been closely engaged with the leaders and the people. Because upon assuming your ambassadorship in NATO, you traveled to different regional states and presidents, including the Mayor, the Patriarch of the Water Exchange. So, given such extensive interactions with key stakeholders in Ethiopian politics, what is your perspective about the current state of Ethiopia as a nation? This one and the others. Different people have different hopes and anxieties. And as someone working in this country, what are your hopes and concerns regarding Ethiopia as a country and the American interest here?
Let me offer a few thoughts and then I'll turn to my colleague, Mr. Stein. So one thing that continues to strike me in my time here and in traveling around and meeting various stakeholders is just the size and complexity of your country. It is a youthful country. You have so many different linguistic groups, religious groups, with different histories and histories amongst themselves. So learning about your people, learning about your history, learning about your culture, your cultures, and how they interact, and trying to determine how they are going to move forward together, which is really not my, I'm not here to determine how that's going to be, but as an observer, seeing how things unfold and how history unfolds today right in front of our very eyes, it's a complex undertaking, without a doubt. But let me come back to unity. Despite all the conversations I've had with stakeholders of high-level officials and normal citizens all over the country, I hear more and more something that convinces me that Ethiopia is a country that is moving forward together. Look, we have divisions in my own country. If you look at our media, there's more that divides us than unites us. That's not true, though. That's because you just see something on social media. I think there is something to that here in Ethiopia, where there are loud voices that talk about division, loud voices that talk about anger, and and looking back with resentment at various points in history. But when I talk to average people, they know that they are going to move forward together. Don't necessarily know how, but it is going to happen. If I can use this opportunity to come back to something that I tried to emphasize last week, which is humility. My government and my people don't have all the answers on what needs to happen anywhere, let alone our own country. Okay, we're making it up as we go along every single day. But we have a flexible enough system in our Constitution and our understanding of how to use our Constitution, which allows us to overcome very serious issues, very serious concerns that we have encountered over the years. Be those from Vietnam to you name it. Okay, we've been able to overcome our challenges. And I know that Ethiopia has overcome its challenges in the past and is going to do so today.
Sure. I would just add that I have lived, my whole professional career has been on the continent of Africa. And I have never worked in a place that has had such a close bond with the American people. Before I even arrived here, in between my last assignment in Uganda and coming here, my wife was on a United States domestic flight going across the country from Washington, D.C. to Austin, Texas. She was sitting on an airplane, and next to her, a woman comments about her clothes, where she got it from. They started talking. And my wife asked, "Where are you from? You look quite, do you happen to be Ethiopian?" She says, "Yes, I am." "Oh my gosh, I'm moving to Ethiopia next month." "Where do you live in Ethiopia?" "Addis." "Where in Addis?" "Old Airport." "Oh my gosh, I'm going to Old Airport." That person has become our closest friend and confidant here. Most of my community has, many people that I know have a foot within in America and in Ethiopia. I feel confident from my perspective. I'm not sitting at the perch of the ambassador, that there is a strong strong bond and friendship between Ethiopia and the American people, and we are here to become your partners for Ethiopia to forge its own future. And if I was to say, just in 3 words, what a potential Ethiopia would be in 5 years, I would say maybe stable, united, and thriving. And I think there's enough ingenuity and brilliance and resilience amongst the Ethiopian people to get there. And I think the American government is proud and happy to be your partners in that pursuit.
Well stated.
Okay.
Well stated.
Thank you again. The second question I have is, our country, Ethiopia, has gone through different ups and downs, and remembering the hard times that we have passed through as a nation, we remember your Cathy 12 massacre. And Your Excellency has mentioned that at the previous speech that you gave at Trinity Community College, His bravery, Cornelius Van Hanger, did a very good job by saving more than 700 Ethiopians back at the time. So is the U.S. Embassy or the U.S. planning to award or do anything to encourage that man? Because I feel like in those moments that we are in conflict, it's really amazing and should be something that we should encourage to find someone that's doing a good deed. So is the U.S. Embassy having anything in mind to acknowledge the good deed that this great man did?
No, that's a really important question. Thank you for raising it. So certainly it was incorporated into my remarks, but I think we can do more, particularly now at the 120th year anniversary of diplomatic relations between Ethiopia and the United States, to highlight heroes of that relationship, heroes that are American, heroes that are Ethiopian. He's an excellent example. And so as we move forward through the rest of this year, which is a seminal year in our relationship, yes, we'll find ways to highlight him and his colleagues, and there are many of them over the past 120 years, many of them. So thank you. Some of them you see in the photo exhibit that is on display here in Addis, but that's a curated photo display of just some images. It's a representative of an enormous mosaic that continues to grow and grow and grow over time, as Mr. Stein indicated. And so, yes, the simple answer to your question is yes. Look forward to it.
Okay, so two of my.
If you allow me, I may have one final question for Mr. Ambassador.
Two of my tasks are to make sure that they are on schedule and that they're at the next place that they're supposed to be, and also to make sure that there's fairness in the room and that we attend to every outlet that's here today. And I'm not sure we have time to get to everyone once again.
I think we have a few minutes for like one more question for everybody.
Only one question. Mr. Ambassador, what is the U.S.'s official policy on Ethiopia's quest for access to the sea? In recent times, Ethiopia is trying to have access to the Red Sea or to Gulf of Aden. And how do the U.S. government see the MOU signed between Ethiopia and Somaliland?
Well, let me go ahead and start off by talking about how our relations, our diplomatic relations with the government led by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have important conversations, many important conversations behind closed doors. And so our engagement on that is an important one on a regional basis, and we are working intensively on addressing our national security needs, the national security needs of Ethiopia, the economic security needs of Ethiopia in a diplomatic forum. Relative to the question of what is our position, you've probably seen what we have said publicly. There has been no change in that respect. And in order to enable the kind of conversations that need to continue to happen on a regional basis, I think it's important to limit the public commentary in that respect. Look, we understand very much that Ethiopia's growing economy needs reliable commercial access to the sea. That is without a question. So as we see Ethiopia grow its relations on a commercial basis with Djibouti as well as other countries, for example, Kenya. Okay, we saw a very important initial landing of an important Ethiopian ship bringing fertilizer to Ethiopia through a Kenyan port. So as we see those kinds of advances on a regional basis, we recognize that that is representative of exactly what Ethiopia needs. We understand that. We understand that.
Regarding the MOU.
I think I've answered your question.
All right, so I think maybe one more question.
Yeah, it's just a simple question that needs a short answer. The Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, following your speech, indicated that it would work with you to correct factual errors and inconsistencies. So, have there been any discussions following your speech? And how will you respond to the MOFA's concerns? Have there been any, do you believe there have been any errors, factual errors and inconsistencies?
I'm in regular contact with my friends in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as other ministries and other elements of the federal government here in Ethiopia. Very, very regular contact. So I think that answers one of the elements of your questions. The ministry, through its statement and its position, has made its position very, very clear. Its views very, very clear. And so I would refer you to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on that one. But in terms of our relations are strong, our relations are good, our relations are regular.
I'm just one more. This is it. Thank you.
The conflict in Sudan affects regional stability in the policy. Is the U.S. engaged with the parties to the
ከቲቪ9 የተነሳው ሶስተኛው ጥያቄ በሱዳን ያለውን የአጥር ግዛት መረጋጋት በተለያየ መልኩ የነካ የዩናይትድ ስቴትስ በግጭቱ አካል እንዲሁም በግዛቱ ውስጥ ያሉትን ወደ ስምምነት ለመመለስ ያመራሉ ወይ ብለው ያስባሉ?
So thank you for asking that question, and I'd love to hear what my colleague Mr. Stein has to say about it, particularly given the humanitarian dimension of the tragedy that's unfolding in Sudan. So we have a new special envoy.
አምባሳደር ማሲንጋ ይሄንን እንደ ግሌ በራሴ ስመለከተው የትኛውም ሀገር ላይ ያለ ጦርነት በቆም አለበት ላለው ሰላም ለሁሉም ሀገር አስፈላጊ ነው። የሁሉም ሀገር መንግስታት ሊያሳስባቸው የሚገባ ነገር እንደሆነም ተናግረዋል። በድጋሚ እድሉን ለሳቸው ላስተላልፍ በማለት ምላሽ እንዲሰጡን አድርገዋል። ምላሻቸውም የአሜሪካን መንግስት ቅድሚያ እየሰጠ ያለባቸው ሀገራቶች አሉ። ለምሳሌ ደቡብ ሱዳን፣ ሶማሌ፣ ሱዳን፣ የመን እና ኢትዮጵያ። በጣም ኮራለሁ በዩኤስ መንግስት $154 ሚሊዮን ለወታደሮቹ እንዲሁም ተጨማሪ የተለያዩ ድጋፎችን እያደረገ ይገኛል። ለሱዳን የተለየ ድጋፍ አድርገናል ሲሉ ገልጸዋል። እንደ ዩኤስአይዲ እያየን ያለነው ውጣ ውረድ እንደ ቀልድ የሚታይ አይደለም። ቢሆንም ኢትዮጵያን እየረዳን ባለንበት መንገድ ለሱዳንም እርዳታ እያደረግን እንደሆነ ገልጸዋል። ለጥያቄዎቻችን በቂ ምላሽ እየሰጡን ቆይታ አድርገው ነበረ።
In April, pledged $154 million in additional resources for humanitarian assistance this year at the Geneva conference, the largest bilateral contribution. However, the day before, the U.S. government also pledged additional resources for Sudan. But those resources are finite and they come from the same pie. So I can't speak to the timing of the ambassador's remarks, but when we, as USAID, look across the region, we see challenges, and not just within the region, but globally. And the best way to secure resources for those most in need is to be able to provide peace and stability and stop these conflicts. And so what happens in one part of the world or in your neighboring countries affects others, and they're all part of the same mosaic that we're thinking through. And there's no easy answers, but from a development and humanitarian perspective, we are looking not just at issues in Ethiopia, but the broader region.
Thank you all for coming today, and you have my card, and of course, you know my colleague Johannes how to get in touch with us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.